Everybody. This is one of our favorite sessions in the mentoring program. We've run it for a few years now, and what is so fascinating about this session is that you can honestly listen to so many different people's career paths and take what you can from it. And usually it's these twists and turns that, we're all kind of facing, we're all kind of juggling. But when you're hearing someone tell their story and you can see where they are and you can see what they're still thinking about and what's ahead, it's just a fascinating conversation. So we're going to be hearing from four incredible women in architecture. Not all of them inside this mentoring program, because we are opening this out to anyone to come into the session tonight as well. And so we're going to hear from each of our guest speakers, and then there'll be a bit of back and forth between myself and the guest speaker and amongst the guest speakers. And then we're going to open it up to the floor. And we want you to engage in the conversation, ask questions directly to some of the guest speakers or just generally to this audience. There could be up to 200 people on the call, and if it's not on the call, then a lot of people will be watching this back. So I want to just dive right in because this is so much we want to get through. So Barbara, I could see that you are in the call. Could you make yourself unmuted and introduce yourself, please?
Hello, hi, oh,
Also, we can't see you yet.
Can you not see me?
I can't see you yet, but maybe it's just not on my screen.
I can, I might be on a different screen.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Barbara Clarenz. I'm the head of residential for London and South East for Atkins Realis, and I'm very excited to be here today. Thank you for having me.
And you can launch right into, because we're going to start with your story.
Right. Okay. Well, again, it's a pleasure to be here. I need to see how I can get that binging away
I know,
from my
that is
face.
annoying.
So I can tell you my story. So I think, thank you, Tanya, for inviting us to talk today. And I think it's a pleasure to be together with such a talented group of women, and well done you to bring everyone together here as well and encourage that forum and ensure that we can learn from each other, really. So just about myself, my journey in into architecture began in my grandmother's garden, where I built already back then. I grew up in the countryside, and I built imaginary cities and public squares in the garden. And long before I knew what urban design was. And that early fascination with space and community then led me to study architecture in Vienna and in Munich. And I had also trained as a technician just after my A-levels before university, which gave me quite a strong practical foundation. Then after graduating, I worked in Germany, and then very quickly I felt the urge to leave the country, and I wanted to work in an English-spoken metropole first because I wanted to learn English because I was very bad at it in school, and the other one to live and work in a metropole and be part of the designs on a global stage and multicultural environment, which I still find very exciting in London to this day. So now, today, as head of residential for London and South East for Atkins Realis, I lead the design delivery, and the strategic growth of the sector, and focus on designing sustainable, high-performing living environments that create value for everyone. So that is my mission. So creating value for everyone involved. So also throughout my career, I have worked across the full arc of architecture, from front-end design, feasibility, strategic design, strategic development, technical design, on-site delivery, and then later now my focus is business development amongst that as well. I also worked in practices from 2 people to 20 to 120 to 38,000. So now I'm a large global business, and each of the scales brings its different challenges and also what you can learn in those environments as well, and cultures, and each stage taught me something valuable. And the nice thing is that you can gain different perspectives. I've also tried out the dark side. So I moved from practice, I moved to the developer, which I very quickly learned that's not for me. So I think it was quite important to try it out because I was told, Barbara, you'd be so good at it. You would be so good at it. Why don't you do it? And also we all know that the gold lures you over there as well sometimes, so it might be more lucrative. And in terms of what what you get paid effectively, but in the end, it was not for me. And so I moved back into practice, but it was very important to learn how it is to the perspective of the client side and how to work from client side as well in that space. So the main thing is really I enjoyed thoroughly throughout every single stage, every single challenge, from vision down to creating details of door handles in the end. So from the overall landscape of a city, a low-rise, a high-rise, etc., a school, and so on. So every single stage was really exciting, and I pretty much threw myself into everything. When I arrived in London, I joined RMGM, and I was very quickly involved in large-scale projects, and one of them was a large laboratory building out of anything, and for the MRC in Cambridge, so flagship building, where I was exposed quite a lot. So I learned really a lot on that, and then also Gazprom headquarters in St. Petersburg, 400-meter tower office block, Saudi Arabia, mixed use schemes, and then a school in Wales as well. So a broad range of sectors, which was quite interesting. And then my next move made me focus on residential development, which probably brought me now where I am now in that role, and focused there more on the local skyline, being involved in One Blackfriars, and delivered Dollar Bay in a residential tower in Canary Wharf, and then also residential towers in Manchester for and somebody's talking on the phone. I think
I'm gonna try and find
them. Deansgate Square. So that was really exciting. It was really exciting to pick up awards for the schemes as well. So there's actually, funny enough, that was yesterday. They came up in my memory. My memories and photos from there as well, which is really fascinating. It's great to be rewarded for the hard work we bring. So I think there are always challenges we face, I think, in our careers, and there is as a forum for women, here as well. I think we can share that we are facing challenges with bias across, our careers, that our male colleagues potentially are promoted faster than we are, and those are all to overcome. But I think there are a couple of things to remember. Is like, first of all, never give up. Then also, I think that the career path, it's always your own path that you create for yourself, and it doesn't have to be mine, it doesn't have to be yours. It's always your own. And I think reminding ourselves from very early on what we actually want to do and where we want to go, no matter what the environment think, what the right path is. I think that is quite important, to always remember that it is your own path. Also, I found there's two views to it. So the multi-skilled, I thought, for me, was quite important, because for me personally, that's what I like to do. There are others, they like to be more focused in one area and become specialists. For me, I enjoy being the all-rounder and having those being multi-skilled. Something else is also, if the opportunity isn't there, build it. And build
where's
it
an
for
example
you.
of that in your career where you've built something that wasn't there for you to take hold of?
That somebody doesn't give you. So picking up the role of sector lead, where there was not a lot to go on, is basically something to build that up. That was a great opportunity to do that and develop that value proposition for the business, and also shape it in a way and drive the quality, drive the design, the client engagement, etc., and build up that portfolio.
And then how important was it that you'd had this variety of experience before you narrowed down into the residential?
How important was it? I think you can probably start with residential and remain residential. For me, it is very valuable to understand what the for master planning and city planning. I think that you understand what the other elements are as well. So if you want to focus your entire career on residential, and you know that from day one, focus your career entirely on residential. What I find valuable across the board is not the sector expertise, but the expertise of design and delivery. So understanding the full cycle of how we design and build and what impact it has, and the decisions you can make early on, the understanding of the full picture in order to make informed decisions early on.
And do you think, looking back on your career, that you had to sort of fight to get some of those different stage experiences that weren't necessarily given to you? Because especially these days, a lot of the projects we start on don't go through all the stages because of the interesting contract arrangements that we have now. So
I think it was probably quite lucky that I had, from early on, I did see the projects through from start to finish. That doesn't happen very often. So I did see them through. But there are also, some of them are chunks where you design up to stage 3, which is normal now, and others you develop from stage 4 to completion as well. So and they can run in parallel. So, but there were quite a lot of them I've seen through. So I've been exposed very early on with relative high responsibility, I think, which was quite beneficial and quite good.
And how, looking back, what were the challenges for you being given those big responsibilities?
Oh, sometimes you didn't know about what to do and didn't have anyone to ask. So you had to
All that, okay.
all that. So you had to work through. And well, you make mistakes, of course, as well, but you need to also then see how you how you get around those. But there was also um, quite a lot of, I don't know, the very early days, immediately material research and details, and you just work your way through to figure it out, basically.
And I guess did you find some people that weren't necessarily on your team, but in other teams across the organization or even outside the organization that you could lean on or talk to or bounce ideas off or something?
Yes, yes, a little bit. So with colleagues as well, and colleagues externally, probably mostly on design ideas and concepts as well, and sharing those. And I think creating a relationships there with the peers and others, I think is quite important throughout the career, to share the ideas and bounce off the ideas as well.
Definitely, definitely. And I'm dying to know, when you were so clear that when you stepped to the developer side, you were so clear once you were there that it wasn't for you. What was it about that wasn't for you?
I think the environment,
Mm-hmm.
the
The
environment,
non-design environment, you mean?
yeah, the non-design environment, the
Okay.
non-design environment. I loved the people. The people were really, really nice, and it was very genuine. But it also was delivery on site. It was a great opportunity, but it was purely from, like, yeah, stage 4, stage 5. It was not for me. Too rigid.
Okay.
It was too rich. It was too rigid.
Okay. Because I guess it would depend on the developer that you are working with. It would depend, like those environments can change.
Of course it can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think it was too rigid, and there was not really a career path I could see,
Ah.
which was kind of like there when I interviewed, but not there when I started. It was very clear that this would take a long time. So I was not, it was not,
You were
and
impatient.
I had another offer as well. And then I had to make a decision, which one am I going to go back pretty much straight away or not? And then I went back to the design side again.
It's so interesting, and I'm sure we'll come back to this.
Mm.
And please, like as an audience, keep come up with your questions for Barbara that we'll come back to. But I know that in the past we've had lots of conversations with people that have gone, like they're potentially thinking about going client side, and they just wonder whether they'll be ever able to return. But clearly, you did in a very short space of time return and clearly thrive as a result of that.
No, I think I didn't stay very long, so it was not a long gap. But I think you definitely can go and switch, and especially in larger organizations, a lot of people actually do that, and it is absolutely possible, and it might even benefit your career depending on what you want to do. Um, but I found myself very quickly that the chances I had to present something, that it was like, oh God, I can't stand there and present. So I missed it. So yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, a fascinating, fascinating journey. and we will come back to you with questions. Honestly, there's so much we can grab hold of there. So we're going to come to Sana next. Sana, are you there and ready to switch on your microphone? So
yes,
please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name's Sana. I am a creative director of To Scale, which is a platform for architecture students and graduates. I essentially make content to help them and support them through university and beyond in their careers. I'm also working as a Part 2 architectural assistant, doing that freelance at Fathom Architects. And I also offer a range of different design and branding services.
So you've got so much to say, and you're very visible on LinkedIn and all of these things. So just take it away in terms of your career path journey so far.
Sure, thanks. So in terms of my career journey, I think I'm probably the youngest and least qualified person on this call. But
which was very deliberate, by the way, very deliberate.
But yeah, so I started my journey in architecture in 2016. Didn't really have a background of what the industry entailed or what the profession was like. So I was almost going into it blind, and I really struggled in my first couple of years at university. I failed a couple modules. I didn't really have any mentors or anyone to look up to. And it was just really tough, as you can imagine, as the architecture school is. Somehow managed to graduate, and that was sort of right before COVID. So I essentially spent the next year looking for a job. I had 10 different interviews, didn't land anything. And that year I thought, let me at least do something productive, do something to give back to people who are also in my situation. And that's when I started To Scale, which essentially was a blog, and I was writing tutorials and articles, essentially helping other students learn from what I had taught myself. And then the following year, I did my year out in practice, which is where I basically learned that the 9 to 5 is probably not for me. I just felt like I had too many things going on, and it wasn't what I had expected from the profession, mostly because I was working in a practice that specifically only did care homes. So it was very sort of cookie cutter template sort of work. And I was itching to kind of get back into university and be a student again. So I really enjoyed my master's. I went to the University of Greenwich for both undergrad and master's. And I think that was really where I started to thrive. I kind of got a sense of my independent style and what I like to design. And while doing all of this, I was also experimenting with content, did quite a few different projects, such as the To Scale magazine. We launched a Kickstarter campaign and got loads of students and graduates involved from around the world to kind of contribute to that. I held a few different cohort courses teaching people essentially how to build your own personal brand. And I've kind of landed now in a place where, having finished my master's, having worked in the content industry, I've seen both sides of, I guess, design and also design outside of architecture. And I'm at this really exciting place where I'm still in practice and still keeping my kind of connection to the industry, but also experimenting with things like content strategy, branding, consulting and coaching, and continuing to basically make content to help students. I also run a series of workshops for graduates to kind of get them into practices, because I feel like that's something that we're really losing out on, is the ability to kind of learn more about practices from them and get into them and see what that working environment is like, because I felt like that was kind of the one thing that I was really unsure about, is what I'd actually be doing on a day-to-day basis. So just getting sort of more clarity and making things a bit more open. And yeah, I think that's pretty much my journey so far.
I love your energy, and I love that you've got so many plates that you could be spinning, and there's so many different directions you could go. And this is why I wanted you to come into this conversation, because I know that you're going to speak to a part of the audience that the rest of us might struggle to speak to, because you're coming out of university fresh. You're seeing the struggles that students are having right now. But I want to start with why the 9 to 5. You're kind of rebuking the 9 to 5. Just out of interest.
I think it's just me as a person.
Not that it's ever 9 to 5, by the way.
I think because I'm naturally not a morning person, because there's always so many different things going on, and I think especially at that time in my life where I was a part one, it was during the height of COVID, and so I was often in the office alone by myself, so I didn't really get that like contact time or mentorship that you typically do get in a studio. And after I completed my master's, I also wasn't really that excited to kind of start applying for jobs again. So it was partly due to like the nature of that whole process, but also not really knowing whether going back to a 9 to 5 is something that I really wanted to do. So I tried freelancing in a content agency, for example, and then I kind of thought, okay, this is kind of something that suits me a little better. I can still make content. I can still, do events and talks and things like that. So I think it's that flexibility, which I realized is something that I really value.
That's very new age of you to be going on about flexibility. Yeah, but I also love the angle that, we're trained as architects, but with those skills, we can apply those skills to so many different things. And we often we get so blindsided by, I guess, the course structure, and then this idea that we move into a practice and we work our way up and we eventually get to project architect, and then we're aiming for associate and dot and dot and dot. But actually, there's other things we can be doing. Yeah. So how did you sort of fall into like the content side of things and social media generally, I guess?
I suppose it was part in because I didn't really find that many tutorials or advice or websites or other platforms when I was a student. And so the main kind of goal with starting to scale was to at least just help one other student, which is why I initially did. I literally just sent like a video tutorial to a friend of mine who was asking how to do a sun path diagram. And then I uploaded that same thing onto YouTube, which kind of like blew up. So I realized there was kind of like a need for this sort of thing, especially in the UK. And at that time, there weren't that many content creators in architecture specifically, and even less so women. So I think that's kind of where it began from. And even the like short form content and Instagram side of things was almost by accident, because I was initially only promoting blog posts on the platform and not really showing my face. And a lot of the times people didn't really know who it was behind this page. So I made the decision to kind of like show up on camera and speak to the audience and kind of communicate with people directly, because I think you can just learn a lot better from a person rather than a name or a company, for example.
And then how does this translate to architectural practices and students coming out of universities eager and willing, but not finding places necessarily, and trying to carve out their own paths?
Right. So I think over that sort of 5 or 6 years that I've been in architecture, I've realized that, especially in the UK, and it's not really the best thing, but networking is a big thing, and you often find that you meet familiar faces all the time. And I think I made a lot of really good contacts and networks and connections just by putting myself out there on LinkedIn and building that personal brand. So that's kind of something that I have encouraged other students and graduates to do very early on, because I wish I had done. And yeah, so even like the open studio workshops that I'm doing, it's not just to connect them to practices and increase their network, it's also to teach them about confidence, teach them about how to write about themselves and how they can kind of figure out their design values and what aligns with them and what they might be looking for in a practice. Because I think so far it's been very one-sided, in the sense that you apply to a practice and they kind of shortlist you out of 200 or 300 applications, and it's very disheartening. And I think that side of the industry hasn't really changed since I graduated. So it's basically just an effort to give people more opportunities and chances, I think.
And if you were to forecast where you might be heading in the next few years, what does it look like at this point? And we're not going to hold you to that necessarily, because I can see that you're somebody who can just move very easily.
Yeah, I mean, I often get asked, like, are you going to do your part 3? And I for now I'm saying no, just because it's not something that I think I'm that passionate about. And I know people, like friends of mine, who are, and it's really great. And of course, like, you should be able to kind of see that journey through, having invested so much time in this profession. But I just think that I'm really, really passionate about storytelling, about, you know, exploring the idea of designing interior spaces and how that works with branding. And those are things that I haven't yet kind of unlocked from practice. And the past year that I've been working at Fathom, I've gotten to learn loads of things there that I, you know, didn't really know that I liked either. So I'm still in that kind of phase of exploring my options, I suppose, while still, you know, doing all these different things. But I think in the next couple of years, I do want to kind of consolidate everything into either a studio or something of that nature.
Okay, I think this is very much a watch this space situation.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Gloria, can I come to you next? Do you have are you ready? Are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. I put just a presentation. I'm just going to share. It's really short.
Please.
Can you see it?
Yes.
I just thought, what if suddenly I don't have anything to say? So thank you very much. And Tanya, when you contacted me, I said, what I am going to tell, like, I feel like, oh my God, I feel like, well, I don't have anything figured out at the moment. And also, I feel still kind of not fresh from the university, but I don't feel I have a long career yet. So, but then you sit down and just start to think about, and it's been a few years, but I wanted to start something with something about Zaha Hadid. Well, she said in 2016, and it's kind of, we see now more women, more female architects all the time, and that doesn't mean it's easy. And it's kind of something about Barbara mentioned, like, okay, don't give up. So I second that, like, don't give up and keep going. So if Zaha Hadid had this kind of challenges, it's normal that we all have them. And yeah, moving to my kind of career. So when I put this together, then I realized I didn't finish the university yesterday. So I studied in Spain, I qualified in Spain, I have 1 year in Paris doing Erasmus, and then I was working in Lisbon for a while, and it was at this point of time that Spain wasn't very well, and I ended up here in the UK. And I said, you know what, it's going to be 6 months, and I will be back to Spain. But to be honest, I left my hometown at 18, and I haven't been back as living there. So I have this thing of kind of moving overseas, moving abroad, like moving. And here I am. And the first few months that I was working in the UK, I think maybe for 1 year, I was working in daylight and sunlight. So I was working in that building you said, Barbara, 1 Blackfire. So I did the daylight and sunlight in that building. So I have experienced a bit of like kind of on the other side, but then I went into practice, like as I call the traditional role of architecture for 9 years. And it has been a few years, like, because I studied in Spain, and in Spain the degree is kind of civil engineering. The first 2 years are the same, so we are really technical. So I struggled at the beginning because I never was this design architect. I have done planning applications, and I have a really kind of stage 0 to 7 like experience, but I never really enjoyed, I never saw my path going through the associate, senior architect, project architect, director there. And after years of thinking about what do I do, shall I move? And you know, I know what Barbara said, that she didn't like it, and that was my fear. Well, what if I don't like the other side? What if my fear was, what if after a week I said I don't like it? You know, I don't like the client side or contractor side. So that's one thing of Gloria as an architect. However, what you see here in the timeline, Sofia and Sienna are cities, but are also my daughters. So I think it needed to be included because I cannot really separate that to being a mother than to be an architect. And at some point, it wasn't working. My work-life balance, it wasn't working for me. I wanted to be a mother and I wanted to have a career. So I didn't want to give up my career to be a mother. And I made peace with that. That was my decision. I wanted to work. And it wasn't working. So that's why I started to explore, what do I do? Do I go to the contractor side, which I think is darker than the client side? That's kind of my opinion. So it was a lot of kind of, what do I do now? So I was doing a few interviews and I was trying to do the other way around. Like, do I really want to do that? Do I really want to work with that? Because my experience is mainly residential. I have been doing some offices, some schools, some church, some kind of community centers, but mainly I have done like from one house to 200 houses, flats. So at some point I was offered a job in the HS2 in WSP. And seriously, I thought I wanted, but I said, do I really want to be working in London Euston as an station? Like, do I like? And I said, kind of, no, really, I want to kind of to experience the client side. So for those that doesn't like the 9 to 5, I still work 9 to 5. However, the client side, at least because it's a housing association, is a bit more flexible. There are some things that I love it, because I see kind of the actual product, the actual house, the actual flat, like key on hand. That's what we are giving. So I really like, because for me, it's like this threshold detail, this detail, like whatever, but it's built so you can really see it's working or not. I miss sometimes the earlier stages. However, I get involved sometimes in some design team meetings because also a lot of things you learn from the client side is like, from the architect side, is like a stage 1 to planning, building control, submission. The client side doesn't work in stages most of the time. It's kind of, we have this piece of land. We are going to have like a partnership or a joint venture with the contractor. What that means. So the amount of kind of contractual things, financial implications that are really more important than the design. So I really like it because it's kind of a whole kind of overview of the project that when you are on the architect side, you are just worried about this planning application. So if some of you are thinking about going to the client side, there is a chance that you are like me, that you like it and you enjoy. However, having said that, I told Tanya the other day, I haven't decided I'm going to stay here, like in the client side forever, or I haven't decided I'm not going back to the traditional practice. So I have this in my mind that I just would like to be a director, head of, going to that level, breaking the glass ceiling. But I'm not sure where, because I may go back to kind of the traditional practice, but I would like to have a different role. So that's kind of, it's a really, it's really interesting because this year I am fine, but for the next few years, I'm not sure about it. And also because I don't think I am busy enough with 2 daughters and a full-time job. I work for the RABA doing the Part 3 interviews as a professional studies advisor. So I have still this kind of connection with the students, the candidates doing the Part 3 interviews. So even if I don't have the traditional experience in the architect role, I still have all the case studies, all the revision, all the checking with them, all the mentoring. So that's something, to be honest, that home group allows me to do, because they very kindly, if I told them I'm going to do the exams in September, they don't ask me to take a day off. They say, okay, you go, that's it. So that's kind of, they allow me. So that's something I keep learning. Sometimes, okay, I didn't know that about this type of projects, and sometimes I get exposed to completely random projects with Part 3 candidates, and I keep learning from them. So I have this kind of experience, like in between, which is, I call it non-traditional architect role. I don't know if that's right or not, Tanya. So.
Well, I think you can claim it as it is, right? Because you're seeing it from your perspective, so you can name it whatever you like, as far as I'm concerned. I'd love to know, like, when you were making that decision to not continue in traditional practice and to work on HS2 projects, but to be going into, you know, the client side. What, like, because I know we spoke about this when we had a chat, is that because I know a lot of people have this sort of anxious feeling of, well, I think I might like to try client side, but I don't know that my CV backs me up with that. I think I could go to an interview, but what am I going to talk about? What are they going to want to know? How is that? Like, how do you make that transition?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing because I have a few calls, you know, the usual recruitment agency telling you you are a perfect fit for a senior architect in this kind of 20 miles from your house. And I said, I have made the decision. I am not applying for senior roles. Like, I am not doing any architect role. That's the decision. So it's really interesting because then I had these experiences, but then you go to the interview and they're like, if you do a proper research of the role, there are some roles like, okay, maybe they are not looking for an architect. They are not looking for A or B qualified, but honestly, what they are looking is my experience. And I have, like, from years, like not even for the last 3 years, for the last 12, a lot of experience in delivery, because at some point I was just doing another construction drawings pack, another construction drawing pack. So honestly, when I went into interview and they were telling me, like, we want someone to go to site, we want someone like who understand building control submission, who understand like the technical issues on site, honestly, you realize, and it's that moment in the interview, you realize I really have the experience. So maybe some of you are thinking, oh, I'm not sure if I have the experience. You do have the experience. So, like, I think the architect role is not the one architect role. There are so many kind of roles on it that
yeah,
you already
I
have the
would
skills.
I would agree with you. I think on that. We sometimes do not understand or realize how valuable we are in terms of our experience.
Too often, I would say.
Too often, and as women as well, that we think we go in a job and say, oh my God, we can't do this, and I haven't got the experience. And a man would go in there, yes, I can do it. I haven't got the experience, yes, I can do it.
Yeah.
So, but the other thing is the value also is in, I think, the complexity, understanding certain complexities, bringing together also, if you coordinate the scheme, bringing together a lot of different people to move in one direction. And then the lateral thinking as well, because that we think that is normal, but it's not. I think that engineers, for example, struggle because they do their own little thing, and understanding the full process also is also. I think we never think about how valuable our skill set is. We need to make far more of it.
Yeah, it's this holistic approach that we have. Because we cannot design and build something. And I started from the planning, like, you cannot design something on your own. So we have a holistic approach. And honestly, even this morning, I went to a meeting and the project manager didn't go. And she was supposed to join, she didn't. And I was asking 8 in the morning, what do we need for the meeting? Because you were supposed to lead the meeting. So what do you need? And I can take it from there. And I was driving 1 hour and a half saying, oh my God, I'm not sure what I'm doing because I haven't been involved in the last few months. It's a huge issue. Like, I don't know, it's a Section 278. Everyone is involved. Highways, the contractor. It's a really like issue. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say. And when I went there, because I have been involved in this for the last 2 years and a half, on and off, when they were asking, I realized I knew everything about the drawing because I have, even if it wasn't my drawing, I have done the markup. I have been speaking with the project manager, with highways, with the contractor, and with the design team. So it's like, even for me, like now that I am thinking, it's another example of like, okay, I have the skills, I went there and I knew what we were talking about, but probably I don't know, it's because it's the imposter syndrome and because we are women, or it's because we don't have a really good reputation as architects on the other side. However, and that's my part on it, I think in the housing association, we are hiring more architects and they are realizing, oh my God, Gloria is adding value. Can we ask her something? So at least I am changing the South region, the London office. So that's kind of okay. That's my kind of part of okay. I am trying like the architect profession, like is have a better reputation, but this holistic approach, the amount of times I am the one telling design team is commenting on something and it's built already. Haven't you realized, project managers, that it's built on site and they don't have this holistic approach? So there is so much that we can add in different tables.
And also, I'd love to ask, now that you are on the contractor side of things, what do you wish architects would know or ask more questions about at the design stage, given that they don't have a lot of access necessarily to the financial decisions and then the broader decisions that are made on the contractor side?
I think it will be asked the question, and that's what I tell to my part 3 candidates when they say, but I don't know about the fee, I don't know how they did the fee, I don't know what's going on, like the project is on hold. Ask the question. If they don't reply, fair enough, but ask the question, what about the fee? Did you do the fees? Like, ask the question, because at least in the housing association is so complex as the client, so sometimes I don't have all the answers, but the financial implications, especially on the client side, are super important, but that's a yes or a no in a project. And I think sometimes when I go to the design team meetings with the architects on the other side of the table, they are so focused in that brick detail that they are losing the control of us as the client. And they need to engage with us. Sometimes they need to guide the client, because at the end of the day, we are the client, and sometimes I think the architects are kind, but we really need that. It was a color at the break, but yeah, we are not leading us at the client. We are losing interest. So it's like, think about something else. It's not only about the drawings, because when you are on the other side, sometimes the drawings are important to me. I am the one like, we are not building this place. But it's just think as a bit outside the box, but you have the skills. We have the skills. Seriously.
And I'd also like to know that you've negotiated for a bit of flexibility to do this sort of extracurricular RIBA Part 3 examiner work and things like that, and like, you know, that's for to feed your interest and your passions and all of that. But how did you negotiate that time with your employer?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think it wasn't really a negotiation that I did even with my line manager. For some reason, like, because it's a housing association and we have just a few architects and a few civil engineers, I think I told my boss I am doing that.
Okay, that's one way to negotiate.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a negotiation. I told him, do you want me to take the day off? Because I am doing the Part 3 interviews. And he told me, no, you don't need to take a day off. That's not a day off. It's okay, it's not a day off, but I am not working out. But you need to do it because it's pretty good. So I think it was given to me, honestly. It was.
But I'm sure you earned it. Like, you've obviously proven yourself, and then they just think, well, if we're going to retain her, we need to.
Yeah, probably
play along
something
here.
like that. Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. Again, there's just so many things we can latch onto there, and I hope the audience is thinking about some questions for you. Caroline, I believe you have made it. You've stepped off the train to join us. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
So I'm Caroline Mays. I'm a director at Treglown. Shall I just crack on?
Yeah, launch into it.
So I studied at Bath. I applied for architecture, but I didn't get the grades for the architecture on my A-levels, and so I went for civil engineering. They said it's got a common first year. You can change, if your grades are fine, you can change at the end of the first year. So that's what I did. And I think, you know, when I made a decision to join, you know, male-dominated industry, at 18, you have no idea what that really means. So when I started my course, there were 13 out of 60 of us were female, and obviously it's much more 50-50 now, but at that point it wasn't. So at Bath, it's a thin sandwich course, so I had some placements all the way through, and I worked for a small practice during that period, and then I had sort of an extra year out. I worked for Broadway Million. So I had small project experience, I had really large project experience. And I went back to Bath to do my part 2, which I sort of felt was a bit safe and maybe I shouldn't do. So I made a bit of a bargain with myself that I would do Erasmus, and I went to Prague for 3 months. And when I went back to Bath to do what I wanted to do. And in the summer between the part 2 years, I worked for Strides, and I've been here ever since. So that was 23 years ago. Never thought that was going to happen. And I bet everyone on this call is horrified, as I would be hearing someone say this 23 years ago. And you know, that's been a worry for me, that I've been happy to stay in the same place. And I think other sort of worries that I've had sort of throughout my career really has been that I sort of fell into education design, and I've sort of specialised in that, contrary to what Barbara was saying. I fell into it, I specialised in it because it really suited me. But I've really worried about that. That's not what architects are supposed to want to do. And also I've had a fairly linear career, and I've sort of worried that I haven't made enough conscious decisions about changing and exposing myself to other things, but I'll come back to that in a minute. So I did my part 3, and I had a pretty early vote of confidence because I started a training support program at the practice. A friend and myself, we sort of felt that there was a lot of support, but it wasn't joined up. So we came up with this idea and got some support behind it, and they said, great, go and do it. And so that, I guess, gave me sort of early on a feeling that it was a sort of practice. If you had a good idea, you had a bit of support, you know, you could do things. And to be honest, that's the reason that I've stayed for a long time there. I was promoted fairly early, and so I was an associate when I went on my first maternity leave. Lost a lot of sleep before I told them I was pregnant the first time. There had only been one person at the practice, technical member of staff, who had a baby and come back. And I was pregnant. I went to an interview, and I was really worried. I stood up and I said, oh, I'll be your long-term contact for this project, knowing of course I wouldn't be. And then in the car on the way back, director and somebody else were having a discussion about how they were really pleased that their wives hadn't gone back to work because it made it so much easier for them. And I'm going in the back, oh my God, how am I going to tell you this? Anyway, when I came back from that first maternity leave, I got put on a big project, you know, huge different scale than I'd worked on before. And it was because they wanted my communication skills. So Barbara said about those skills that actually we don't value in the same way, but somebody else had recognised was really important. And I know that a lot of people can worry about staying at a practice and being a student in a practice and then qualifying, and that people never seeing them as anything else as a student. But I think in hindsight, I never particularly worried about that, but in hindsight, what my maternity leaves allowed me to do was come back in a slightly different guise each time. And so that sort of gave me a gap. So after my second maternity leave, I came back to work 2 weeks after Michael Gove pulled the BSF programme in the House of Commons. And I was like, oh my God, I don't have a job, because I had mainly done school design. And so I had a period of sort of 9 months or so where the practice let me do business development, basically. So I had a real opportunity to build a network, even though it was really frustrating because there was no work out there to get. So I felt like I was going round and round in circles. But having a focus like that was something that essentially then became a sector lead role in the future. So I was always really worried that I was promoted for female things. They were things that were intrinsic to me, and so I suppose I didn't value them. As Barbara said, you know, you think everyone can do them until they can't, and I didn't value them as such. I am quite a natural manager, but you know, management is a bit of a dirty word in architecture. And I think I always knew that I wasn't this sort of industry ideal. I think that, you know, the industry has this real sort of, an architect should be this sort of person. I had a boyfriend at university, black polonet glasses, got first. You know, he was what I considered the industry ideal to be. And I definitely was that. So I didn't know, you know, then therefore what I was. And it took me a long time to be comfortable with that. So I was sort of doing my thing. I was working part-time, dealing with the mum guilt that we all have for potentially for working as well as being a mother. Got promoted again, and then I was approached at Christmas party after several drinks with some people in my team. And I was standing there with my friend who had been at university with me, always been sort of a grade higher than me in the business. And these girls said, "Oh, really pleased to see that you two can do it, so we know it's possible. Doing it for the girls and all that sort of thing." And I just didn't want to be part of that conversation, and I completely justified it that they were talking to her. And then she left, and a couple of years later it happened again, and I didn't have her standing by my side at that point, and I sort of had to deal with the conversation. But I realised afterwards that I felt quite differently about it, and I think that's because I was obviously first time it's happened, very much still proving myself to myself, I think, whereas I was much more comfortable with where I was when it sort of happened the second time. And around that sort of time in my career, I had some coaching, which I found really, really helpful. I was feeling a bit sort of around some things. I'd had some friends worked at the practice for a long time with me who had left. I did some work around my personal values, but I really wanted to sort of work out why I was still happy to stay. And I didn't really want to leave, but I sort of felt that maybe I should leave and do something else. But I knew that I wouldn't walk into the same level of seniority of role on the same flexible basis. And I asked the chairman at that point what my value to the business was. Plucked up a lot of courage at the end of a conversation, talked a load of other things, as I was about to leave the room. And he thought long and hard and said to me that people liked me, which made me a really good ambassador for the business, and I could get people to do things. And I came out of that room so cross and upset. And years later, I've told him and other directors this, and they were like, "Oh my God, I would have killed for that advice." But at the time, that's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear you're a great architect, because he's a really good designer, and I knew that was what he was what values. So again, it's taken me quite a long time to be comfortable with that. So then there was it became apparent that I would be asked to join the board, and that came a little bit earlier than I expected. And it caused a bit of a crisis of confidence. Do I really want it? It's what I thought I wanted, but if I sign up, if I say no, that's a bit weird, got to leave. And if I say yes, that's forever. And I've been there 15 years at this point, and I never thought I'd be there that long. And I also sort of, at this point, took a deep breath and said, if it requires me to be full-time working 9 to 5, then I'm not interested, because I've got 2 young kids, and that just doesn't really work for me. And then I didn't hear anything for a while, and I was a bit like, oh God, what have I done? But then I was asked to present to the board with a view to joining. And in that sort of reflection to do that, and the coaching that I had, I realized that people were my motivation. So people walking past the building, people using the building, people commissioning the building, people paying for the building, people working to design the building, not necessarily the gem of the building. And so that's what's, I never felt like I was an architect with a capital A, but I explained my motivations like that, and that I wanted to join the dots within the practice. And I was sort of starting to be more comfortable describing myself. And there was only other one female director on the board at that point. She was our finance director, so she was fairly hidden within the business. And so therefore, when I became a director, a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is amazing, you can do it, you can join the board," which again puts a whole load of pressure on. I trained as a coach a little while after that, and it was partly because I had done quite a lot of mentoring as a senior female that was fairly approachable. People would come and talk to me, and I felt like I needed some more tools to help with those conversations. But it was really transformational for me in terms of thinking through some of those worries that I've sort of described so far. And I think that, combining with actually doing, as Gloria said, some Part 3 examining and awards judging, has sort of really helped me think about actually my progress and how sort of far I've come. So since I joined the board, our chairman had always been our HR director. Our chairman changed just over 2 years ago, and I was asked to be the HR director, but I didn't want to be HR. I'm not a trained HR professional. We have trained HR professionals, so I've become people and development director because I've realised, with that platform, as an architect, as a female, someone that's been at all levels of the business and now on the board, and also as a trained coach, I can do something in this business right now that nobody else can do, which is massively empowering. And I want everyone to think about their, to be as excited about their career as that. But some of that sort of comfortableness with that has been really hard won, as I said, and I do feel a responsibility as a female leader now to talk about this sort of thing, which has taken me quite a while to feel comfortable with. I think just reflecting on my journey, there's definitely been some individual managers that I've had, or leaders, male, because they were all male, that did help and unlock things for me. But I think sometimes that was through wanting to help me a bit, but also wanting to help themselves, because I was doing things that were quite useful to them. And so as a female leader, I'm quite conscious to do it slightly differently, to share myself and the way that I've felt about things along my way, along my journey, and the vulnerabilities that has felt, because I think people can then take what they need for that. I didn't know any more the day after passing my part 3 than I did the day before. I didn't know any more the day after becoming a director than I did the day before. But you're a director, studying, people expect you to know everything. And I think particularly around that lived experience as a working mum, I'm in a position to influence the policy, gender pay gap, and what have you in our practice now, which I take very seriously. And I think, taking up every opportunity that you have, it's a learning experience in everything. It might not be the project you want, but there is a learning experience in everything. And just going back to that sort of worry that I had about that linear path, I always used to think I sort of didn't think about things enough. Barbara's talked about some very sort of conscious decisions she's made. I went and judged some awards, and people were making, at very early stages of their career, very conscious decisions to make a change. But I've realised that I sort of feel my way into things, and rather than think my way into things. And that's, some people think their way into things, I feel my way into things. And actually, that is my superpower. Only it's taken me a long time to sort of to realise that. And I should also say that just because I'm a director now doesn't mean I will be a director forever. I want to do some other things at some point, and so thinking about what that journey might be. So actually listening to Sana and Gloria's stories is really interesting and useful for me, because I've been in the same place for a long time, and therefore, just hearing time and time again that I do have transferable skills is actually really important to me as well.
I love that. I absolutely love this. And the part that I latched onto, and this is the first time we spoke, was after your 2 maternity leaves, you were determined to not sort of come back and to sort of just roll back into what you had done before, but to actually use the fact that you had taken a break and come in and redefine a role. I'd love you to just talk a bit more about that, because I think that is really, really powerful. It's not always possible for people, clearly,
no,
but
I don't think I did it consciously, and this is what I worried about. I wasn't doing these things consciously, but because I took the opportunities that were given to me, which the first time round was a really big project. It was in the same sector, but it was a hugely different scale that we'd done before, and in a hugely different role within the project because of that. And then second time round, I might have felt like I didn't have a lot of choice. I probably did. I could have said, no, I really want to be on a project and worked on something else. But I think this sort of, my dad always used to say, you make your own luck. I think I've been quite lucky in my career, but actually there probably are things that I was doing that I couldn't see at the time that helped create that environment for the opportunities to come. And the other thing just to add to that, and something going back to those sort of intrinsic things that I never valued, I remain constantly surprised at the number of times I say, just let's sit down and talk about it. That is so obvious to me as the way to solve almost every problem. And so it took me a long time to realise I had to say it out loud, and then that I wouldn't be laughed at if I did say it out loud. But But people, and a lot of men, absolutely need to hear this. And this is where I think female leadership is so important, diverse leadership is so important, because things that we think are obvious are not obvious to everybody.
And I'd also just love to touch on the fact that you are at board level now, and that is not a place that many of us will ever get to. So what have you seen like on the other side in terms of a board level conversation, and what do you wish other board members would know about? Like, what should they be doing, and what do you wish people outside of the boardroom would know about the boardroom conversations?
Oh, that's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think in terms of our board is 15 people, and we are all just individuals, human beings trying to do their best job, just like all the architects in our practice. And I think we can put people, like I said, being a director, you should know everything. Everyone is just trying to do the best job they can. You're more senior, you've had some more experience, you've got more to draw on. You might not know the answer, but you'll know how to approach the answer probably better than the day after you passed your part 3. And I think we do like to sort of put labels on people, and you're on the board, so you must be amazing, and that puts pressure that is wholly unnecessary, I think. And so I suppose what I do in the practice is try and dispel some of that by just talking to people, taking people as they come, and just talking to them in terms of what do I wish other board directors knew.
Go for it. Come on.
I think again that I think as a group, we're actually really good at listening to each other and different perspectives. So you need to have people with different perspectives in the room so that you don't go down the groupthink. I've always felt very respected in that room. Even, we have a sort of a flat structure within the board, and when we're all paid the same. And so even coming in as a new board member, I didn't feel the need to particularly hold back or need to have earned my stripes before I was allowed to talk. And I think that's really important, that and I've tried to make sure that we maintain that, and we build that for people coming behind. Over the 18 years since, so my eldest is 18, over those years we've gone from only, as I said, one other person before me in the business that had come back to work after maternity leave, to almost 30% of the practice that don't work 9 to 5. So we have all sorts of flexible arrangements, and I can't claim that that's all down to me at all, but things that I was doing 10, 15 years ago are now part of our policy. And so I'm quite proud to have been able to demonstrate it is possible. Often that comes at personal cost. Don't get me wrong. This is not easy, but I think it's really important that there are people that you can see it is possible. That sort of answers the question.
Definitely, and that's why we have calls like this as well, because I think we've seen 4 very different journeys, and this is brilliant. I would love to open up for questions, and Eleni, I'm going to come to you first for something, right? Please help with your first question. Come on, I know you've got something.
I was expecting it. I can't see the chat, so I can't see what's going on in the chat. So Karen needs help with that. But I suppose what's interesting and fascinating about the conversation this evening is that the 4 different career paths, and we're just, I suppose, we're told that a career is a linear sort of thing that goes from A, you go to B to C, and then you constantly progress up. I'm not quite sure what that up is. So my question would be, what advice would you give then to an architect that is so anxious to succeed in climbing that linear ladder?
Oh, who wants to go for that? Barbara, you look eager.
Well, I think going back to making sure that it is your own individual journey, and what actually makes you happy. And it's so important and powerful, because what makes it happy also makes us thrive. And it doesn't mean it's not whatever classic career. I wasn't the same word, so I have to do this or that, or that's an architect. I'd actually hardly ever looked left or right. Maybe I should have, maybe I shouldn't have. I've done it once, didn't like it. So, but it's a very individual journey as well. And I think that is really important to understand and reflect on. And the earlier you reflect on that, I think the more content in the journey one becomes.
Oh, I love that. Gloria, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I wanted to add something because Caroline is kind of saying that she's worried about being linear, like in career, she doesn't change. And it's funny because I worry exactly the opposite. And some days, because you have bad days, it's like probably yesterday because I had a really bad Monday at work. It's like, why I couldn't just stay in the first practice, go up and up, and maybe I will be associate by now. Why I tell myself why I cannot be in this lean like this line. So it's so interesting how being completely opposite, you worried on where you are. So I just found that really interesting. That's your worry because I have the opposite.
And I think that's really important though, because we all have our own worries and they feel like the only thing to worry about, and we don't necessarily realize that everyone has the you have the opposite one or what have you. And then just to add to that, I see a lot of people in the practice worrying about being promoted in the linear, and I would say the more you worry about it, the less likely it is to happen, because you start to focus on things that are less important. And in the right environment, if you just focus on doing things well, I do think reward will come. Now, that doesn't always happen. We don't live in an ideal world. I do know that. And sometimes you need to put your head above the parapet and show people, demonstrate to people, be vocal to people about what you're doing. But I think that should come after focusing on doing the things you think are right, doing the things you think are important, not that you do those things because you think it will help you take the next step or what have you.
That's
Yeah.
so right, Caroline. I mean, that's when it happened for me, when I stopped worrying about it and I started having fun, with the things that I do. So I think that's fascinating to see that we actually have had very similar career paths on maternity leaves and so on. So I really liked hearing that. Thank you.
And I and just hearing about, I recall I was really comparing myself to a colleague of mine who we'd studied together. And, I was so intent on getting the experience at all stages because I felt like that was my way to be rounded and really understand what architecture is all about. But my colleague, he would just jump from practice to practice to practice to practice. I'm thinking, how are you seeing any projects through? And he wasn't. But actually, somehow he was getting the different stage experience across different projects. And he climbed to a director position very, very quickly, even though he jumped around maybe 10 practices and I'd been at 1 in that time, he'd been in 10. And I was constantly looking here. And then one day we had this conversation. He's like, you do realize that when you change practice, you also have the potential to get more money. It's like no, really? So I was just in this bubble of just go, no, I'm just trying to work hard and I'm trying to see a project through and da. But anyway, so there's just so many different ways you can do it. And yes, if there's opportunities, there's not always opportunities to move and or stay. And I think, but just knowing that, okay, well, yes, some of it's down to circumstance, but otherwise it's down to your personality type, your passions, what you are, what you're strong at, or what you feel like you need to fill as a gap to make you stronger.
Can I just add to that, because you talked about comparison with others, and I think that's really important because we all do it, but I think as women we probably do it more, and especially if you are part-time or a working mum or have other caring responsibilities outside work, it's very difficult to sit and watch a supercharged man race through a practice whilst you're there 3 days a week struggling to arrive in clean clothes, don't have your kids breakfast all down them. And so I do talk about that in the practice. I had someone who was when I was an associate, so this car journey I mentioned, one of those people, he was a project architect, and in the space of somebody's case study that they wrote, so 4 years, he went from project architect to director through 4 steps or whatever it was at that point. but I still made it to the board. You know, I did it differently, and I bring different skills with it. And so at different points, I would really have beaten myself up about what he was doing versus what I would do, because we do things in really different ways. But I think just being clear that there are different ways to do it, and it's not just one way because you see one person doing it one way, is really important. And in some of the coaching I do internally, that comparison with others is something that comes up time and time again.
And Sana, can I just come to you in terms of, you know, students coming through? Is there this feeling of I need to get an edge, but I'm only like, I'm just coming out of university. What edge can I have over the others? Do I need to go back and do a master's? Do I need to, like, what are the things that are coming up that you're seeing or that you've actually felt yourself?
Yeah, I think there is. I think because it's such a competitive field that a lot of graduates, especially at part 1 level, when you most likely don't really have any previous experience, and a lot of the practices out there ask for a year or more, it seems quite ridiculous and challenging and frustrating, I think. And I experienced that as well. And I think the finding a new edge or finding a different skill set is definitely something that people should be doing. I don't know if they are. I think we are moving towards a space where a lot of younger people are looking to take their skills that they've sort of gained from architecture into other industries and kind of explore those different options, whether it's urban design, interior design. It's still sort of adjacent fields, but still within that sort of core design industry. So yeah, I think it just depends on sort of what someone's looking for and what they're interested in as well.
Definitely. Karen, hi. Did you want to add something, or did you want to go through some of the chat questions?
Yeah, we've got quite a few chat questions here. Yeah. So I'll just start at the top, and if any of you have put a question in the chat, if you want to put your hand up, if you want to say it yourself, and go ahead, we'll bring you on. But Medini has said, you know, how do we pivot and reset after losing a good opportunity at work, at the time not realizing it is a good opportunity?
Ooh, who wants to tackle that one?
I suppose I would say, yeah, oh, sorry. I suppose I would just say quickly, whatever you're in is an opportunity. Because so what I said, you know, every opportunity is a learning opportunity. Yes, some might stretch you more than others. You might consciously feel more than others, but actually anything you're doing, there is learning and things to take out of it. So I would try and keep a positive mindset around that, and just go, oh, you know, I'm in the rubbish thing. I should have done that, because that starts to affect, I think, what you're doing. So keeping a positive mindset and absolutely making the most out of every opportunity is what I would say.
I'd also just add to that sometimes you don't know. Yeah, like you see the opportunity and you think, oh, is that for me? Am I qualified? Am I ready? And all of those things. But then actually it's the moment it's taken away and it's given to somebody else, and you realize, no, actually that is the thing I need, and that's the thing I want. But it's only because you've kind of, you've had a moment to sort of let it simmer, and then it's gone somewhere else. And that's happened to me as well. And then it's that moment that you think, right, now I'm sure. Now I know that's the direction I want to go. And then you can look for other opportunities that might fit something similar and hopefully be better, because I'm sure it could still be better. But I think sometimes you need those moments where it's make or break, or somebody takes it away from you that to make you realize that you want it.
Yeah, and I'd say sometimes we don't realize that we can look in hindsight and tell ourselves that actually there's still a discussion here that I can have. I don't have to say that that's gone. I can say, no, actually everything is negotiable. And just go out and have another conversation and say, hey, I realize now that this has passed me by and perhaps I shouldn't have done that. What other options do I have, or can we turn this around or something? And don't deny yourself that conversation around lost opportunities. Yeah. So next question from Tammy. Why do you think that studying architecture allowed you to delve into various paths? What is it specifically about your course that helped you gain skills?
Cool. Sana, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I think, I mean, me specifically, in my undergrad, I didn't really get taught much. It was more so learning as you go and sort of teaching myself different skills and like working through with friends and things like that. So I think it was just being open to trying new skills. I mean, I did like event management at one point. I produced a magazine. So it's like I didn't have any experience in those things, but architecture is kind of that like stepping stone career or degree that you can take things from, whether it's composition or whether it's graphic design or whether it's you know, even like the way you go about designing in that process. So I think it is essentially a multidisciplinary career because you do so many different things. You just don't realize it at that point when you're in the thick of it.
It's a problem. You learn how to problem solve in a very creative way. And I think architects often forget that we can become so good at visualizing and making something happen out of nothing. Like there's a brief potentially, and that brief needs shaking up and massaging and whatever. But actually, and when we start to bring other people with us on this journey, and then we have all the problems thrown at us from all sides, and we just you know, take it all on and say, well, yes, we can accommodate that, and that's going to make this, and this is, and that is a skill that, you know, we are learning at university. We just don't quite know how to apply it. And I just think that yeah, if we took those problem solving skills, we could apply it to so many different areas in business, in other sectors and other disciplines. And we would be adding some value that they don't currently have because of the way we think, because of our ability to make something out of nothing, if you see what I mean. Gloria, do you want to add to that?
Yes, I think we said in Spanish like a kind of like an old degree, in the sense of it's so broad, you learn so much. And if, I mean, some of you, like even if you are like early in your career, when you work with the structural engineers, full respect to them, but they are just looking at this steel beam, that column. We have this kind of holistic approach to everything, and that's for me, like, I don't do drawings anymore, I just check them. But sometimes I'm in the office, the one connecting the people, like explaining to the team, and sometimes I feel I cannot believe the director has forgotten the brief. Sometimes it's just telling the brief to the people, just telling everything, connecting. I think we are good, you know, when we put a planning application together, if you put the planning application, you are calling the tree survey consultant, the heritage consultant. I think we are good at that, putting everyone on the same place. And I think we forget that that's unique about the degree. And I think about the degree and then the career, I think that starts at the beginning in the degree.
Yeah, I love the way you frame that. Brilliant. Karen, do you want to go to another question?
Yeah, I'll move on. Sarah says, I'm working with colleagues who are more experienced than me. I'd really appreciate advice on how to build strong relationships with more senior team members while also finding ways to stand out and grow professionally in a relatively large company.
Oh, Barbara, do you want to answer that one?
Oh, good question. So how would you normally create relationships outside of work? I think it's probably one to think about. And do you want to do the same in the practice and also where you work? Because you work there, you are with your colleagues, well, for quite a substantial amount of time during the week. So that's something you want to think about. Also, you know, what's useful to them? And it's like what Carolyn said as well. What is useful to them? What you can give them in order also to gain their trust. And the ways to stand out, I think, is you might want to find your topic and also your brand. Think about what is your brand. What do you want to be known for? What is your topic you want to talk about? What are you interested in? So she's the one who talks about sustainability. sustainable living, for example? Or is it about any other topic you can think of? Is it, I don't know, something technical? Is it modern method of construction? Is it, and what is also your brand in terms of, can you already think about a team building, or what is it you want to be known for? I think, and how do you want to stand out? I think it's probably something to reflect yourself on.
And I guess the next question to follow on for that would be, but how do I know what it is I want to stand for? You know, potentially I'm interested in lots of things, potentially I'm known for lots of things. And what advice would you have to sort of narrow that down?
Crystal, I did also like a coaching course at some point, and there are many useful tools. Do we do them every day? No, but you know, it's always better to give advice than actually do it yourself. But it's like there is this kind of way there is, you can think about, if you think about 8 things you're interested in, put them in a circle, and then you put a scale to it as a ring, but which ones are the strongest one and which ones am I actually most interested in? It's a little bit of a self-analysis, and that putting that on paper is actually really powerful, because you put it on paper and maybe the next day you look at it and say, that's actually not it. And you think about what's the first thing that comes to mind you want to really get across as well. So I think that can help to yourself with your own conversation, or do you have it with a friend or somebody else as well? I also did once an exercise where I asked my colleagues and my friends, use 3 adjectives and describe me. With 3 words, describe me and my character. That I thought was also
That's
quite
a good one.
telling as well.
Yeah, but I also love the idea that you can talk about who you are to a complete stranger. I'll obviously be careful out there talking to complete strangers, but you know, but if you're talking to someone like they don't know your background, they don't work with you, and you just kind of hear yourself talking about it and say, does that sound like me? Does that sound like someone I want to be? I think that's also a useful measure, because if you like the sound of it, even if it's not quite true yet, you can feel like, okay, well, that's a direction I could head in, and I just keep sort of talking about it, and then I might be moving in that direction if I keep talking about it.
Just to add to that putting you know, what's important to you in circles, and you know, trying to work it through, I would say, don't worry if you don't have an answer, because it took me years and years to work out, to be able to talk about what my motivations are, like I have just done today, like 15 years. You know, at the you know, Passing Part 3, I was in the sustainability group, I was in the DFMA group, I was wanting to do this, I was, you know, so you've got to try stuff, because you don't know what suits you until you do. And then I think over time you get a sense, and you have to try and make sense of it for yourself, because other people won't do it for you. It's only when you make sense of actually what's important to you, so that you can sort of decide to concentrate in an area that really sits with your personal values, that sits with why you get out of bed and come to work in the morning, that you can sort of work out how to describe it and talk about it, I think.
And also I liked what you were describing, Caroline, about the fact that effectively a HR director role was offered to you, but you knew, no, like I can't take on that title, that's not me, but I could make something of that me and I'll take it over here and make it my own. And I think there's definitely something in that approach, I would say.
Yeah, because
sometimes when someone tells you something, you think, no.
Yeah, because I can do things they can't do because I'm an architect. So they bring their professional knowledge, but I understand the business intrinsically because I've been a fee earner in a way that they don't. So that translation for them is something I can absolutely bring, but it needs their expertise.
Brilliant. So Caroline, we're running out of time. Should we just choose 1 or 2 more questions, and then? And if anyone wants to shout out a question, like please do so in the next couple of minutes.
Here's what. Has anyone taken a career break, and in what ways has it helped you, or did it feel like you lost time?
well, I think we spoke about maternity breaks, but I guess is this potentially breaks that aren't maternity leave? Has anyone done that? No.
I came after 6 months maternity leave twice, but after the second maternity leave, after, I don't know, a few months working with 2 kids, 1 baby and 1 toddler, it wasn't working. So I took a break because honestly, I was so overwhelmed. And that was what triggered to change to the client side. So it was probably my worst time ever as kind of what I am doing now. I don't have a clue, but it was the best decision ever to take time and say what really I want to do. Like if I am putting my kids into childcare, I want to do something different. So I will advise you to take that time off. It's really worth it to sit down and reflect. What do I want to do with my career?
Yes, especially if you could financially take, you don't take too much of a hit. It is, taking a break might be the best thing you can do for your career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Karen, should we try for one more question?
To all presenters, what made you stay as an employee at a practice and climb the career ladder within, having the extent of experience you've got, rather than setting up your own practice?
Oh, yes.
Not brave enough, I guess.
Not yet. There's still a path that can be.
No.
I said that some. Sorry. Go ahead.
Go.
No, I said that something with a friend. We have a small practice and we do extension here and there every 2-3 months. And it's just for fun, a few weekends. But I think I still like this kind of the career ladder going up because the projects, the scale of the projects and the issues. I love a challenge. So that's my answer.
But I gotta say, your own practice is a nice big challenge.
Yeah.
If you want a challenge. Yeah.
I guess if you want projects of a certain scale, that's very difficult to do with your own practice or with a really small practice. But I think I think I would always have been in a certain size practice. But I think a reason that I haven't moved, as I sort of talked about, was in the sort of size practice that I'm in, I can have a certain amount of influence, but it's big enough to need processes and things that it works for me to be able to review and to analyze, having been at all sorts of different stages of the practice. So I sort of trying to essentially fix some of the things that were frustrations for me coming through. But in a much bigger practice, there would be too many layers of protocol and too many people to talk to do all of that. So I think for me, it's about being in the size practice that suits me, as well as the type of work, project work that I'm able to do.
Well, and Sana, I mean, you don't necessarily have an architectural practice, but you do have your own business, and it sounds to me like you are shaping that to become something that might look similar to a practice, or it might not in the future.
Yeah, I think so. I think I think when you think about whether you want to be an employee or you want to maybe start your own business and be that entrepreneur, I think it's more about what you feel comfortable doing or what your gut says. I feel like I personally go along with what my gut is telling me, even if that's in a job interview or applying to something. And I think that's kind of like the advice I would give so far, at least.
Yeah, but I guess I've also seen a lot of people that go out into practice to set up their own practice on their own and or with others, and in some sort of small collaboration, and then they dabble in that, and if it doesn't work out, they go back into practice. It's not like it's like a one-way street. It's a bit like what we're hearing here with going client side doesn't need to be a forever decision. Being at board level doesn't need to be a forever decision. Being in a large practice doesn't need. So I do think that we are going to be seeing different scale practice and different types of architectural practices in the future, because I think the economics of the situation we need to be thinking about what architects are doing more broadly than what they're currently doing, and then the practices will look different, I think, as a result of that. So yeah.
I say I admire the courage also to set up your own practice, especially when you're very, very young. When I look back, I wouldn't have had the confidence when I finished university or at that stage. I didn't even think about it. It didn't even occur to me that I can do it. And or is this an option? I didn't even think about it. And I think it's great to really take that step and have the courage and do that and embrace it. And if there's something else, then there is something else. So sometimes it has to be linear. It doesn't have to be. Yeah.
So Ezra, you've got your hand up.
Yes, hi. Just
Hi.
a quick question, I think maybe for Gloria, or maybe others can answer as well. So you mentioned being part-time, you mentioned being a mother from diverse background, and on top of that, you're a woman. There's so many layers, and I can obviously relate to all of them. Being a mother and part-time, recently qualified architect from diverse background. It's a lot of different challenges that I have and a lot of different layers that I have to unlock. How have you found navigating through that in your career? Is that slowed you down a little bit? Has that created more, I don't know, challenges along the way? How have you kind of looked at that?
It's a challenge. I mean, being a mother, it gets easier when they grow. However, being a woman, and in my case, being a foreigner, which I can try a lot, but I cannot lose my Spanish accent. I'm not even trying anymore, to be honest. But sometimes when I go to site, I feel it. I don't know how to tell you, but I feel it that they are annoyed because I am a foreigner, I am a woman, and they don't like what I am saying, because usually it's like, this is not built according to the drawing. So usually I have a point, and they don't like it because I have a point. But, I am not giving up. I decided that years ago when I have had a few, I want to give up. I am not giving up. So it's a challenge. So for me, I just tell myself it's happening. And I continue doing it because I think from me, like getting a bit older and having more than 10 years experience, when you get to do it more and more, and I know I am right. I know I have found something is a mistake. It's not compliance with building regs. I have the confidence. And the more you do it, the better you get to it. But it's a challenge. I don't know, Caroline, you being like, I guess British is easier because you don't have the foreigner thing. I pass that to you.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know.
No, but it doesn't matter what language you speak. They never like it if you tell them that's wrong.
No,
I
it's
think
true.
whether you're a woman or whatever language you speak, I think that should not make a difference. But we sometimes think it does, but it actually doesn't. Potentially, I think that is something as well. Also, the site interference. Also, how I think you go in there and have conversations there with the site team, because that quite often is the question as well. I don't feel confident on site. You hear that a lot with women. What do I do? I don't feel that they respect me and things like this. But doesn't have to be that way. So they're probably more scared of you than the other way around.
Yeah,
But it's like,
yeah, to me it was less about the language barrier, more about not having enough people from a diverse background in senior positions. So naturally you walk into a room and you're not really, you don't know how to behave, you don't know if you can speak out, you feel automatically less than, just because there's not enough representation in senior positions or higher positions. So it's challenging in that way, not finding other people to look at that have kind of made it to director or whatever board level, that you can see their path and maybe follow some of it, even though it's not linear in any way. So it's that kind of challenge more.
I think this is where it comes down to being sure at each step of the way that you're doing what you want to be doing that's right for you. Because if you communicate with that in mind, that you actually get questioned less. So I used to almost always be the only woman in the room. And over the years, it's got a little bit got a little bit less. Working in education, there are more women, because there's women on client sides and stuff than possibly some of the other sectors. So that might have helped a little bit. But certainly from a construction project perspective, there were never very many women in the room. And when I now walk into a room that is 50-50 or even slightly more women, I really notice it. It's really interesting, and you don't realize how sort of conditioned you become almost over time. But I would just say, don't let it hold you back. You know, you've got as much right to be in that room as anybody else. You just need to make sure you're communicating in a way that is valid and understood, and that's whether you're a woman communicating to a man or a woman communicating to another woman.
Yeah, and I would just add to that I've not had language barriers, but I've certainly had plenty of situations where I'm the only woman in the room, and I'm struggling to find my voice and know when I can speak and whether that will be respected and all of those things. But I think the thing for me has been that when you can, so if you walk into a room and there's kind of the dynamics of the room that you're the odd one out in that room, you kind of need to break that room down and say, well, how many conversations could I have outside of that room to make it easier to go into that room with those people? And I don't think I did that enough when I was going through, going up the ladder, if you like. And I wish that I had have spent a bit more time building relationships one-on-one, because I think in a group situation that is tough. But when you take people one-on-one and you get to know them and you engage with them in a way, they understand you, you understand them, you can have a better conversation and a better feeling for the conversation when you're in the group. And so I do think there's something in that. And I know that's not easy for women to do, especially if it's, you know, there's effectively just a room full of men. But it's so interesting. I've had so many conversations with some senior male members of teams years later, and they had summed me up in some way, but actually they had a deep respect, and I just didn't take the time to get to know them, and they didn't really take the time to get to know me. And I do think that just created so many unnecessary barriers that I wish I had spent a bit more time sorting out, frankly. And yeah, so I think it is like step by step, like if there's a room for, like, you know, step like 1 or 2 people, start with the easiest people that you can talk to, and yeah, then it will grow from there, I believe. And also I think your confidence will grow from there as well.
I think also
sorry.
I think like touching on what you said, Tanya, like finding an ally, someone that you can work with, because every time I go to sites, I am the only woman in the room in that meeting. It's happening all the time, but there are small things like if I am going with someone, because it's also from the client side, so I speak to them. So, you know, even if you go to that room with someone and you have that conversation, we have that issue on site, or that's going really well. When you go into the room, you are not on your own. You are not only not on your own, you have some ally that they are not, you know, we have been discussing that because we have another project. So I think when they realize that the relationship is benefiting both of you, like also like, you know, both ways, because sometimes we think, oh my God, they don't want to speak to us, but there is the other side. Okay, maybe they need to speak to us. They want us, like they want our relationship. So it's a bit of change of mind. Sometimes there is a lot in our head, and I think as women we overthink more than men. So maybe it's, I don't know, maybe a bit of preparation before the meeting. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I thought like, okay, it's going to be full of men. Like, relax.
Yeah, I don't know. But also, why is it a they and a us, and why is it not a we?
Yes.
If you go with that feeling, maybe that also changes something in the approach.
Definitely.
Not really letting that get to you, easier said than done. But not to undervalue your voice, and really not hesitate, find the right moment to speak, but also not hesitate. And sometimes we also well, me, I've also gone through motions. One time I'm braver, then I'm not, and you know, it always depends on the situation as well. But I think we should always make the effort and not be put off, and really value our voice.
Well, I think that is a beautiful way to end. So please thank all our speakers, because honestly, these stories have been incredible, and I love that you've bounced off each other as well. That's been beautiful, and some brilliant questions coming in. And if there are some that we haven't answered, we might actually just circulate to the group and see whether there's some things we can answer afterwards. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming along. And if you're watching this afterwards, please, thank you very much for your time. And we hope that it inspires you to be either staying where you are or pivoting or dreaming about what's next. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Tanya. Thank you.
Especially to our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.